Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining our webinar today. I know that in the current economic times, one of the questions we're getting a lot is, how do I continue to feed my horse well, but on a budget? With shows and board and lessons, etc., all closing down and people have lost their jobs, folks want to know how to maintain the necessary parts of the diet without a lot of the excess waste. So we're going to go ahead and get started. The reason why we add anything else to the diet is to complement available forages, okay? And so concentrated feeds, supplements, they're there to balance what we don't get out of our forage. And you need to choose the correct product to complement your forage and to meet the needs of your horse. Just because the neighbor's feeding product X doesn't necessarily mean that you should feed it based on what hay you use as well as what you do with your horse. Maybe your next door neighbor is a 3-day event rider and you do pleasure trail riding. You're going to feed your horses completely differently. Out in California, you have some of the best hay available to you on the West Coast now. Yes, it is quite expensive, but it still makes up the foundation of your diet. And most folks should be able to get hay tests. Susie was able to pass on some hay tests to me. So the hays that I am representing here come from hay tests from your area. The other information that we need is, and you look at what I've got on this screen, you think, oh, this is basic. Why is she showing us this? I think it's really, really important that you understand that your horse that you're working with. Because if you don't understand the horse you're working with, oftentimes we overestimate or underestimate his workload or his body weight, and we can be wasting money feeding extra or not feeding enough if we're not fully evaluating the exact horse that we're working with. So age, young horse, old horse, I think people are pretty on the money with age of the horse, but body weight, it's hard to determine the horse's body weight. And because of that, all of our supplements and feeds, the feeding directions come as a percentage or an amount of body weight. And if we don't actually know our horse's body weight, then that can be an area where we can be wasting money. And so if you have a scale, obviously that's ideal. Most people don't have a scale though. A weight tape is another way that we can estimate body weight, but then you can also use this equation. And the equation uses the same measurement as the weight tape, the girth. So you take a piece of string or you take a measuring tape and you measure the girth, and then you times it by that number again, so it's girth by girth. Then you times it by the length of the horse. So the length of the horse is from the point of the shoulder to the point of the buttock. And you take all of that and divide it by 330, and that gives us a better estimation than the weight tape. And the reason why it's better estimation than the weight tape is the weight tape, the only measurement that it takes is around the girth. And based on the girth circumference, it automatically assumes a certain body length. Well, we've all seen horses that are long-backed and short-backed, and so they are not going to be accounted for as correctly with a weight tape. Versus using this little equation, it accounts for the circumference of the horse as well as the length of the horse. There's no guesswork there. And so why both the weight tape and this equation aren't as perfect as a scale? Because neither of them take into account the exact weight of the legs or the neck and the head. They estimate those what those should be. We need to know his body condition score. Is he a 1, a 9, somewhere in between? And we need to honestly evaluate his body condition, because a lot of times we're wasting money trying to add weight to horses that don't need extra weight, or we're wasting money on different supplements that may not gain our horse as much weight as they need. So we need to have a good estimation of body condition. And when we evaluate activity level, some feeds and supplements will say if you're doing X level of work, moderate, light intensity, whatever, they don't care what discipline you're doing. They take into account the amount of hours of work that you're doing with your horse. So we need to estimate actual activity level based on the amount of hours of work and the amount of intensity. Really, are we trotting? Are we walking? Are we cantering? That kind of thing. So judging body condition, that's really the first place where you can have a huge impact and you can really skew your outcome. And I'm showing you all this again because if the goal here is to save money, again, we need to know exactly the horse that we're working with. So in order to body condition score a horse, you're actually going to take all of these different areas over the crest, the withers, over the ribs, where you do the girth up, the flank of the tail head, and combine all of those to give you an estimation of body fatness. These are where fat deposits usually occur. So you can see it goes from a 1 to a 9, and a 1 is super emaciated. You can see this horse is really thin. He's probably depressed. There's no need to touch this horse. His bones are poking out everywhere. A horse that has a body condition score of 2 still looks terrible, but his attitude is probably picked up a little bit, and there's slightly more tissue covering. I wouldn't say fat, I would just say tissue covering. 3 here, still this horse is too thin, bit of a U-neck, visible ribs, visible hip bones, visible bones in most places, but he's got a decent coat. You know, this might be a yearling filly or yearling colt as they're growing. They're high behind, they're low in front, they're high in front, they're low behind, they look thin, they look fat, you know, they go through all the different growth phases. But for a mature horse, this horse is too thin. When we get into a 4, this is a gray area. We've all seen endurance horses that look like this, or race horses, and maybe this is their peak racing condition. But for most of our horses, whether they be breeding horses or just pleasure horses or even our competition horses, this is too thin. Ideally is a 5 and a 6. These two are what we consider a perfect body condition score. I don't have to press really hard to find the bones or the ribs, but I can't visually see them. We've got an even fat coverage. We've got even top line. There's no dip. There's no crest visible. There's no fat pockets in any of those areas noted. Now, this horse has a body condition score of 7. And if we cut him into 3 sections, if we took his forehand, his barrel, and his hindquarter, he's really 3 different horses. You know, his hindquarter is really light, his barrel is getting a bit bigger, and then his front end is quite heavy. So you've also got to take into consideration different types of horses and different physical makeups of horses. You know, folks that are used to seeing quarter horses and then they see a thoroughbred think every thoroughbred is underweight, but it's just the different physical makeup of these animals. But this horse is slightly overweight. Then an 8 and a 9, these horses are considered fat and obese. You can see this is a very clear description of crest fat. You don't even see where the shoulder turns into where the girth does up because it's just one big fat slab. I don't see a defined wither there. His tail head is coming out kind of a quarter of the way down his rump because the fat pad on his hindquarter is so big. If you looked underneath, he'd probably have a really fatty sheath. The other area that gets really fat on these horses is above the eye, and that little area that's supposed to be dimpled in, concave, actually starts to bulge out. I call it their brain fat. It's really not brain fat, but there's a fatty deposit up there as well. And so we need to really evaluate body condition correctly. So then we need to evaluate, what are we currently feeding? What hay are we feeding? Do we have an analysis on it? As I said in the examples that I'm using, these are analysis from hays available in your area. What grain are you feeding? What supplements are you currently feeding? And you need to be able to, there is no supplement or feed on the market that says you need to feed, 3 coffee cans a day. Everything is listed in ounces, and yes, on the DAC labels we have scoops, but beside it, it will say how many ounces that is. So you need to know exactly how much of each of these you're feeding. Do you have any special needs? Metabolic syndrome, tying up, HYPP, where we're trying to decrease potassium. All of these things will sway the horse's diet and maybe increase or decrease the cost of that diet. You know, oats are less expensive than beet pulp, for example, but I can't really use oats in a diet for a horse that has a crusty neck and metabolic issues. So what are my goals also? Are your goals for your horse to gain weight, lose weight, go faster, go slower, be less crazy, deal with gastric ulcers? What are your goals when you're evaluating the diet? Because it's not just, I want to decrease my feed budget. You want to decrease the cost of your feed, but you've still got, everybody has individual goals for their feeding program. And right now, we can assume that most horses have a decreased athletic output, right? We're not going to shows, we're not training at the upper levels that we were before, even if it's just for trail. We're not going on trail rides as much as we would have before. So we don't have them at their peak fitness. So we can decrease the calories some. That means we can typically rely on good quality hay to bring most of the calories and protein to the diet. And then we need to make sure that we're addressing the vitamin and mineral needs of the horse. Depending on, maybe it's a broodmare, then we're going to have some extra protein and calories. But for most of our horses, we're really trying to address the mineral requirements of our horse. This may also be a good time to put a little extra weight on your horse. If you've got a riding horse that you take to shows and you just always struggle with getting weight on him, well, right now we know that you're not exercising them as much. Everything's on a little bit of a downturn. So maybe now is a good time to try and bump that up, because we're not fighting that extra calorie output of into extra exercise. But if you're really trying to cut back on your feed, then maybe now is not the time to be gaining weight. But I'll give you a bunch of examples. But I want to start out by showing you that cheap feed, inexpensive feed, is not always less expensive. So this is Producer's Pride. It's an all-stock feed from Tractor Supply. And it seems too good to be true. Out here on the East Coast, it's about $9 and change a bag for a 50-pound bag of this pelleted or textured feed. Oh, that sounds great. Okay, so with 20 pounds of hay, regular, local, meadow mix type of hay, whatever, that doesn't have the best calorie content, for our horse doing light exercise, the back of the bag recommends that you feed about 6 pounds a day of this. Well, you can see, and I'll orient you to this graph because we'll see this several times. On this graph, we've got DE stands for digestible energy, CP stands for crude protein, Ca is calcium, P is phosphorus, Cu is copper, Zn is zinc, Se is selenium, Mn is manganese, I stands for iodine. The next three are kind of squished up, but Ly, and it should have an S after it, is lysine. Then we've got vitamin A and vitamin E. They are all the bars represented on our graph. These are all nutrients that have a requirement and are typically deficient in the diet. So when the diet is sufficiently met, so all of these nutrients are met, all of these bars would touch that 100% line, that dark red line that goes across at the 100%. That means, so you can see here that the digestible energy is probably at 98% of what the horse needs. Crude protein probably about 95% of what the horse needs. But when we get down to something like phosphorus, he's probably only got about 55% of what he needs. We want all these bars to touch that red line. So in order for me to balance this diet, I had to feed about 10 pounds a day of this all stock. So then it starts to not be inexpensive at all. Then 10 pounds a day of this product works out to be about $1.89 a day. So that's getting to be quite expensive, especially as we go through my examples and you see what ingredients cost. So beware of the initial price of a bag. Typically, the less expensive the product, the less concentrated it is, the more you have to feed to actually get the nutrients that your horse needs. So it works out to be not that economical. So these were the hays and ingredients that I asked Susie to give me prices for. Teff hay, which isn't so common out here on the East Coast, but it is widely grown on the West Coast. It is a warm season grass that has a nutrient density similar to Timothy, protein and energy and mineral wise, but it's really low in sugars and starches. So for any of our horses that are carbohydrate sensitive, it's really ideal. This teff hay that Susie gave me the pricing for, these are big bales, 125-pound bale, ran $19. So I worked out that was 15 cents a pound. Your local meadow hay, 90-pound bale, ran around $19.95 a bale. Folks here on the East Coast are throwing up in their mouth as they see these prices, but these are larger bales than what we're used to. That works out to be about 22 cents a pound. Alfalfa hay was a 137-pound bale. It was really good quality alfalfa, high in protein and calories. About $21 a bale, works out again to be about 15 cents a pound. Beet pulp came in a 40-pound sack. Susie quoted me $17.95, so that works out to be about 45 cents per pound. And oats, a 50-pound sack, runs $17.50, so 35 cents a pound. So these are the ingredients, base ingredients that I've used as we go through these examples at these prices. Now, it's very easy for you at home to plug in your own numbers and redo my calculations. I will make sure that you have a copy of these slides so that you can redo these calculations and get an estimate of your exact feeding program. So I've got here the product pricing that I used for the DAC products. And the three products that I'm going to focus on today are the DAC Orange Superior, the DAC Oil, and the DAC Digestive Feed Additive. And when Susie and I were discussing the goal for this presentation, we really wanted to make sure that people knew exactly how to feed their horses during this economy. So it would be great if we could keep feeding all of these different supplements, but these are the three that I felt made up the foundation, the core group that we should, no matter what, try and keep in the horse's diet. So you can see that per ounce, when I break it down per ounce, there's quite a difference in the price per ounce based on buying a 5-pound bag versus a 40-pound bag. Now, these are prices from last month, and I have noted on every other slide that prices are subject to change. So take these as a guide, not exact. But as sticker shock, we look at, say, DAC Orange and look at it's $151 for a 40-pound bag, and we think, gosh, in this economy, I really can't afford that. But on the next slide, you'll see how much of a savings it is if you can purchase in larger quantities. The DAC oil works out to be 28 cents an ounce if you buy it by the gallon, but 19 cents an ounce if you can buy it by the 5-gallon bucket. And the DDA, again, 45 cents an ounce for a 5-pound bag and 23 cents an ounce for the 40-pound bag. So look, I just took one product, the DAC Orange, and I broke it down to weeks, months, and years. Because I think when we look at it just per ounce and you think, oh, well, it's only a little bit here, a few cents here, a few cents there, it really doesn't make that much difference. So the 5-pound bag, $35.28, 40-pound bag, $151.73. Initially, that's a lot of sticker shock, but look at it over the course of the day, the week, the month, and the year. So for one day, it's going to cost me 88 cents to feed 2 ounces of DAC Orange when I buy it in the smaller quantity. But if I buy it in a larger quantity, it's only going to cost me 48 cents to feed. Well, that adds up. In a week, if I'm only buying the smaller quantities, it's costing me $6 to feed versus $3 to feed if I'm buying the 40-pound bag. Over a month, we're now looking at almost double. $26 to feed the horse 2 ounces a day when you buy the 5-pound versus $14 when you're feeding the 40 pound. And over a year, $321 to feed if you can only buy the 5 pounds at a time, versus if you buy the 40 pound bag, it's $175 over the course of the year. It's nearly $150 savings just by pooling your money and trying to buy the 40 pound bag up front. Okay, so I know maybe that $151 sounds like a lot, but look at the savings that you're getting when you buy in larger quantities. Get together with your friends and buy, and split the bag. Do whatever you can, but buying in larger quantities, it's not chump change. It's significant, the savings that you can make. So going from here on out, I'm assuming that people are going to buy the larger quantities. So the pricing that I've got here is based on the larger quantities, the 40 pound sack instead of, or the 5 gallons instead of the smaller quantities. Okay, so increase these values if you're buying in smaller quantities. So example 1, and we've got about 8 of these. I took a 1,100 pound horse. That's really our average size horse. And he's doing light exercise, so that would be similar to trail riding. And he should be getting 2% of his body weight per day in forage, so that's 22 pounds of hay. And for this example, I chose the teff hay that Susie showed me. And based on the amount per pound, the cost per pound of the teff hay, remember it was 15 cents a pound, times that by 22 pounds, it's $3 a day to feed this horse this hay. Add the 2 ounces of dark orange, that's 48 cents, and we're looking at $3.48 per day to feed this horse, $24 and change per week, $100 a month, and $1,200 per year to feed this horse hay and orange. Now, this is just straight teff hay. There are teff pellets available that have the same nutrient content. So you say, well, what am I going to carry my dark orange on? You could sub out 2 pounds or even 4 pounds of the hay and put in 4 pounds of pellets so that you've got something to feed him morning and night. Put in a bit of water and stick the orange to it, and that's pretty inexpensive. That's about as cheap as you're going to feed this horse per day. Now, if you have lesser quality hay, know that you're going to have to add more ingredients to boost the calorie content, and as we see later on, that starts to get more expensive. So getting a good hay to be your foundation, that's the key to feeding on a budget. Okay, so alfalfa and meadow hay were some other options. Alfalfa brings some great quality protein to the table, brings a lot more calories to the table, but I know in California people are a little nervous about feeding a lot of alfalfa because of the mineral content. We need to make sure that our horses are drinking plenty of water. And I don't feed 100% alfalfa, but in this example, I've got 5 pounds of alfalfa. We've got that same horse doing light exercise, and 17 pounds of meadow hay. Now, our meadow hay doesn't have, it's kind of variable in nutrient value, but it's less nutrient dense than our teff hay, and can sometimes have higher non-structural carbohydrates as well. So, based on the price of alfalfa, and this is, I specifically put in the California alfalfa. I've got a hay test that Susie sent me. So 5 pounds of alfalfa worked out to be 75 cents. 17 pounds of meadow hay was $3.74. I had to bump up the amount of dark orange because the meadow hay is not bringing as much nutrients to the table. So we're going 3 ounces of dark orange at 72 cents. Needed a few more calories because the meadow hay is lacking. Now, I could have added more alfalfa, but knowing that some folks are a little shy of adding alfalfa, so we added 1.5 pounds of beet pulp, and based on the price, then it's 68 cents for 1.5 pounds. So total cost per day is now $5.89 to feed this horse when we have a lesser quality hay that we try and boost with alfalfa and beet pulp. And over the course of the year, now we're looking at $2,000, $2,100 really to feed this horse. And we've bumped up the non-structural carbohydrate content slightly, but still fine for a horse that is not actively suffering from any metabolic issue. Now, let's look at a horse. So now we're going to an actual goal. So our original goal was we're just trying to feed our horse doing light exercise, just balance the diet, take out all of the unnecessary things, and what is the bare bones. Now let's look at if we want to put some weight on a horse, and let's say we need 40 pounds of gain. That's going to change him one condition score. So you can see on my graph now, instead of the digestible energy column hitting the 100%, now it's at 125%, because I know that when I balance the diet and I put the energy intake at about 125% of their maintenance level, they're going to gain that weight that I need. So again, we take our horse, he's still doing light exercise, but I want to put some weight on him. So we go back to that first example. He's getting 22 pounds of the teff hay, which is $3 a day, the orange 48 cents. But let's say we choose oats. He doesn't have any metabolic issues, so we choose oats to put weight on him. About $1.40 a day. And the total cost to feed this horse is $4.88. And you can see how it plays out over a week, a month, and a year. We're looking at $1,700, thereabouts, $1,800 a year to feed the horse. And I think that when you get into horse ownership, it should be mandatory that everybody look at values like this so that they realize that, sure, okay, I can feed a horse. I've got an extra $5 a day, but it adds up over the year. And this is just the feed. This isn't the boarding, the training, the gear, So owning a horse is expensive. Okay, so let's say we didn't want to use oats. Let's say we have access to alfalfa and we wanted to use alfalfa to feed the horse. Instead of using oats, we put in the alfalfa hay, and we know that alfalfa is less calorie dense than the oats. So we had to feed more alfalfa than oats. So we've got 6 pounds of alfalfa in there, and you can see this diet worked out to be about $4.38, around $1,500. So a little less expensive than adding oats. But if you don't want to feed oats or alfalfa and you want to feed beet pulp, how is that going to play out? And you can see that beet pulp is considerably more expensive than either two first ingredients. 5 pounds of beet pulp is going to get us to that 125% of their digestible energy requirement. So the total cost per day is about $5.73 to feed this horse, which works out to be about $2,000 a year. This is putting weight on him. Now, this one, what if we use teff hay, the hay? You could imagine this is like a Timothy hay if you don't have teff available to you in your area, and the dark orange. But we use oil, and we're going to use about a pound of oil. So this is about 16 pumps of oil a day is going to give us this weight gain. And it's a little more expensive than our other options. So someone might shy away from this example because it looks like it's a little more expensive to feed a day. But I want to draw your attention to the chart and look at what else you're getting from the DAC oil that you're not getting from any of the other nutrients that I added for weight gain. You're getting a significant amount of natural vitamin E, 4,000 IUs per pound. So we know that horses that are thin don't store vitamin E. We know in California horses don't eat grass, so they're not consuming natural vitamin E where normal horses would. So most of our horses are deficient in vitamin E. So you can see here that whilst for weight gain it's a little more expensive than our alfalfa or beet pulp or oats, we're getting added value with the vitamin E. And I want to show you, okay, so remember these values. It's about $45 a week to feed this horse, $6.50 a day. Okay, but if we went back to the beet pulp example, because we don't want to use oats, we want to have a low carb diet for him. So we go back to the beet pulp example. In order to get the same amount of natural vitamin E in our diet, we would have to add 2 scoops of DAC-E natural as well. And now that takes the cost per day to $6.87 and $48 a week. So you can see that it was less expensive to add the oil than it was to just do beet pulp and add the E natural. So let's look at early lactation, because there really isn't any other time in a horse's life that they would have more nutrient requirements than a mare in early lactation. So I figured I will show you the opposite end of the extreme. Okay, we've shown you horse and light exercise, and now let's go all the way to the opposite end and show you how we can feed this horse, who seemingly needs to eat gold to stay alive, and would seem to cost a lot of money. But let's see what we can do with her diet. So again, and I keep using the teff example because the meadow hay didn't really bring a lot of nutrients to the table for me. The teff hay being that Grown specifically had a lot more nutritional value. So, and it's available in California. So I go back to that one. So we know that the mare in early lactation, though, needs a lot of calories, and she needs a lot of protein, because that's what she's producing, milk, which is calories and protein, right? So 4 pounds of teff hay and 18 pounds of alfalfa gives us our 22 pounds, because this is still that 1,100-pound horse. We decided, oh, well, we can't do trail rides anymore, so we'll breed her. We took that same horse and we're breeding her now. And we've got 3 ounces of DAC orange, because this lactating mare has higher requirements for vitamins and minerals than our trail horse. I still got to feed 4 pounds of oats to get a bit more calories into the diet, and then just a little bit more calories, so I'm adding 4 ounces of oil as well. So if we look at how much that costs per day, it's about $6.18 per day, which works out to be about $2,200 a year. Now, of course, she's not going to be in early lactation for a whole year, so I really, in this example, look at the week and month value more than the year value, because she'll be in early lactation for 3 months. So we're looking at around $500. But I know you folks in California can be a little shy, as I said, of feeding too much alfalfa. So let's say this doesn't sit well with me. I don't want to feed that much alfalfa. What are my other options? Okay, so let's back down the alfalfa, bump up the hay, teff hay, and see what else we have to do in the diet. So if you're going to bump down the alfalfa, know that you're losing calories and you're losing protein. So we've now got 9 pounds of teff, 13 pounds of alfalfa. We still got to have 3 ounces of orange, because we're really just losing protein and calories, not vitamins and minerals. We had to add 5 pounds of oats. Now we had to bump up the oats, and we had to double the amount of oil in order to get this weight, to maintain her body weight. Cost per head per day bumps up to about $7.29. So again, over a week, $50, and over a month, about $220 to feed her when we take out that alfalfa-based calorie and protein source. So the one other nutrient, or not nutrient, but supplement that I believe that every horse should eat every day, but I haven't added it to each of the diets, because it really doesn't bring a lot of mineral to the table. What it brings to the table is your Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is your live cell yeast. It brings your mycotoxin binder. It brings, beneficial bacteria, your biomass, and none of those can you see on those graphs. So just because we're not exercising our horses, we're not trailering them, don't for a minute think that their stress is completely gone, because the lack of exercise could be a stressor for these horses, especially if they're used to getting out every day and getting exercise. Potentially, we're making some feed changes here. Maybe we've been using, a commercial concentrate, and now we're going to switch to more of a forage-based diet. Now that's a good option, a forage-based diet, but it's a feed change. Maybe there's staff changes at your facility. If your facility is one where you're not able to go anymore and they've had to hire people that are going to be feeding all the horses and maybe doing churn out, that can be stressful. So the digestive feed additive, the DDA, when buying it in the 40-pound sack, again, it's 23 cents an ounce. We recommend 2 ounces per day for this 1,100-pound horse. It's going to work out to be 46 cents a day, $3.22 a week, $13 a month, and $167 a year. That is the best money that you will spend. I was literally just on a phone call earlier today where the gal said, you know, it's amazing the indirect benefits that I see when I feed digestive feed additive, hoof quality, hair quality, things like that we don't associate necessarily with feeding DDA, but in my mind, they're directly associated to DDA, because if you get the gut healthy, you improve feed efficiency, you improve their ability to digest fiber. And in that hindgut, we've got things like B vitamins being created by the bacteria that live there. What's one of those B vitamins? It's biotin. So what's biotin going to help with? Hoof quality. So getting the gut healthy, that is going to go a long way to saving you money, because if the gut is running at 100% efficiency, then that's going to save you money right there. How are you going to do that? Keeping your diet simple, plenty of good quality forage, and adding a basic digestive supplement like the DDA. So my little mantra is, you know, every horse every day should eat the DDA. This was an advert that we put together, that every horse should start the day with DDA. So with that, I'd entertain any questions.